Welcome to Wild Contemplations with Kristin and Cori. We are glad to be back this week and so glad to have you here listening with us. So, Cori and I are taking a journey around the wheel, looking at the gene keys that are illuminated by the sun, grounded by the earth with their programming partner, and also weaving in elements of astrology, human design, and our lived experience. So thank you for being here. My name is Kristin. I'm one of the hosts. I am a 1/3 emotional projector, Sag Sun, Libra Moon, Pisces rising. Cori.
Thank you. My name is Cori. I am a Cancer Sun, a Virgo Moon, and a Virgo Rising, a 4/6 sacral manifesting generator in human design. And yeah, just really grateful to be on this journey with Kristin and all of you listening across space and time. Um, we had a little break, so it feels like it's been a while, even though it was probably just like a week. But we were both traveling and moving through the transit that we contemplated last episode, which was the sun in 56 and the earth in 60. And then just about probably 2 days ago, the sun moved into the transit that we will be contemplating today. So the sun in 31, the earth in 41. We'll do a little check-in after we take 3 breaths together to settle into this space. So if it feels good to soften your gaze or close your eyes, maybe bring a hand to the body and then just take 3 breaths together. Okay, so I will run through the frequency bands both from last week and the ones we'll be contemplating today since we have moved into this one. So last week, the sun was in 56 with the frequency bands of distraction, enrichment, and intoxication. And the earth was in 60 with the frequency bands of limitation, realism, and justice. And now today we'll be contemplating the sun in 31 with the frequency bands of arrogance, leadership, and humility. And the earth in 41 with the frequency bands of fantasy, anticipation, and emanation. So we'll just do our little check-in to see what's been happening.
Hmm. Yeah, so for me, as Cori mentioned, we were traveling. I was doing quite a bit of work on my travels, with like personal, like updating a condo kind of work, not like business work. Um, but I found myself in that space in I guess, two ends of a spectrum. One being that I was very much just present, observing, like being in the space that we were in. And on the other end of it, I found myself, and I feel like I may have felt this way a little bit the last time we recorded, but my tolerance level is not super high. So, like, I noticed myself being super intolerant of anything that just didn't feel aligned with the presence that I was in and or wanted to be in. Um, I feel like there's a lot of right now, especially for me, just a lot of illumination of what's not in alignment for me right now. And I know I actually did a sound healing on Saturday. I went on a journey for about 90 minutes and I really felt this emergence coming through. It's like I'm clearing everything out of the way so that I can emerge this new shiny version of Kristin. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of amidst that clearing, there's a lot of intolerance there, I'm finding. How about you?
Yeah. I was traveling this past week and celebrating my solar return. So that's always an interesting time of the year, because obviously it's marking, another trip around the sun. And kind of like, I think, a shedding. Um, as you were talking, I was just thinking, like, since my birthday, I think 4 days in a row, I pulled the death card, So it's like, um, it's just this time of reflection and just tuning into where I am now and who I am now and like how I want to move forward from here, I think. I still feel at a bit of like an in-between place, where, yeah, like there is this clearing of kind of things that are just ready to be let go of. And I felt like I had the space to do that while I was traveling. I was telling Kristin before the call, but I was in Montana and I was able to spend just a lot of time immersed, like with the land, with the water, with the rocks, with the rainbow energy, and just yeah, allow my being to kind of receive and be filled in that way, but also let go of some things and also receive, reflection back about where maybe some things need to shift. And so, yeah, I certainly feel like at this place of just an ending and a new beginning, I think, is what I really, yeah, have been tuning into.
Yeah, it's as you were talking about the rainbow energy, I immediately felt receiving, just like being an open vessel to receive all the frequencies. So that's really, really beautiful, really beautiful. And, sitting at this, beginning and ending, as you were saying, this threshold, it's it's really interesting to find, I think we've been talking a lot about this too, like to find space to be in both places, right? It's not just one or the other. Like it really is this, you know, I want to say like merging, it's like this, you're merging, the new version is kind of merging into the old almost. And in that sense, maybe it's not so much of, a closing of a chapter as I often think about it as, right? Like I got to close off this old identity, right? And then bring in the new. But maybe it is really this merging because that's just what came through me as I was reflecting, and the old will still always be there, but that, these um, new perspectives, new ideas, new reflections, new ways that we receive, sort of come through and create this what feels like a new version, new chapter, new beginning, as you were saying. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, as you're sharing, like what keeps coming to mind is like perhaps it's even just like a deeper level of surrender, Like as you move through, it's maybe what I'm feeling is a less of a control and more of like a trusting of it. And like, again, maybe kind of loosening my grip on certain things and just like, yeah, really being with what is, as opposed to like how I want things to be or like think things should be. And I feel the keys that we're contemplating today very alive in what you just shared and just that kind of energy. So I will run through the logistics of them, I suppose. Um, so we have the sun in 31 with the frequency bands of arrogance, leadership, and humility. In human design, this lives in the throat center and it reaches towards the identity center. It's called the gate of leading. And in the I Ching, it translates to influence. And so it's part of our collective circuitry, that understanding or logic circuit. And it's adept at using language and words in ways that, um, yeah, people are drawn to. And I think more than anything, this in the Gene Keys book, this chapter is called Sounding Your Truth. And I think at this level of like the humility, the acidic frequency, so this full spectrum that we do always have access to, the other word that comes up for me a lot here, always with the city, but especially with this humility, is like a surrender. Is yeah, kind of loosening the reins of control and just really allowing, I guess, more of who we are in this particular form and lifetime to emerge from us. And I think it also really speaks to the ways that I think our leadership is shifting, um, is like opening up to these energies of like being more us and knowing that like by being us and living that out, that we kind of create space for others to do the same. And so in a sense, like it's not leading as in like, hey, come follow me. But rather like we can all be here together in our unique expressions, um, and kind of like work together in that rather than sort of try to like compete and have to follow a certain way or a certain belief system. Um, and then we have the Earth in 41 with the frequency bands of fantasy, anticipation, and emanation. Um, when the sun moves into this gene key, which it is on the other half of the year, um, it's the mark of the human design and gene keys new year. So we can kind of say with this transit that we're at the kind of halfway mark of the year right now. And the reason that this marks the beginning of the year is because it is what's considered a start or initiator codon. And so, like we've kind of explored the stop codons where they kind of set the tone to stop reading the code. This one activates the code being read. So it's kind of there, again, as we were kind of expressing, at the threshold, at the end of a cycle and beginning of a new cycle. Um, and it's kind of like it relates, I think, to an emptying out too, because we have these keywords here, like in human design, this is the gate of contraction. It lives in the root center and reaches towards the solar plexus. And in the I Ching, this translates to decrease. So it does kind of tune us into maybe this halfway point of the year where we're checking in with sounding our truth with um, what's alive within us, what's wanting to emerge, and yeah, and kind of releasing what what's ready to kind of fall away with that old cycle. But like you said, not that it completely goes away, that wisdom lives within us always. Um, but that maybe we can loosen the grip on those fantasies of the mind that kind of like want to create this dream world and don't make space for both things, as you were kind of alluding to before.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about with the surrender that you're speaking of, which I very much feel aligned with. I'm feeling, on that line, acceptance. So what I've been noticing a lot of is it's interesting because I kind of now I want to say like more tolerance for, even though I was saying I feel like I've been kind of intolerant. There's there's this, yes, I've been intolerant to what's not aligned for me, if it's coming, like if it's impacting me in some sort of way. But also I've found more tolerance for being in spaces of difference, of um, being in a frequency that maybe I can't relate to at the time. And there's this more of a recognition for, let's say someone else's experience or an environment, like an environmental vibe, if you will. Um, and more tolerance for that being there. It, I don't know if I'm making sense here, but it's it's interesting because we talk a lot about, our oneness and like the spiritual world. We talk about the oneness and being one and we're all the same and all of that. And you know, it's interesting because there is this, it's like yes and no. There's a real difference between a lot of us too. And the difference doesn't necessarily create separateness or have to create separateness. It just creates resonance, right? How much do I resonate with the person, the thing, the situation around me, right? Like when I feel that, when I start to feel that difference, and experience what I'm calling quote unquote intolerance, I'm very clearly recognizing this is my resonance, this is my field right now, and this isn't vibing with that, right? However, it doesn't, just because this isn't vibing with me, doesn't mean that there's not an acceptance or that there's a judgment of that difference, right? It's just that's not my vibe right now. And I don't want to engage. I don't want to participate here. Um, and so yeah, it's just I hope that this makes sense, right? Because I'm talking about like in some ways I'm intolerant with what's not in resonance with me. However, I'm finding more tolerance and acceptance of there being that difference and just recognizing that the resonance just isn't there and that's okay. Does that make sense?
It sure does. Yeah. It not only makes sense, but it's something that's been alive for me as well. And yeah, I understand exactly what you're describing, and it's kind of hard to describe. So I also understand why it's like, does that does that make sense? But it feels like there's just yeah, a deeper knowing of like oneself, the role, like you said, the I don't know what the word is that I want to use here, but yeah, like you were saying, it's just you can tell when something isn't really matching that. Um, and you can also tell through your own kind of compass, like that's not where I want to be, you know? That's not what I want to be doing. And it doesn't make that wrong for whatever, if anyone's wanting to do that or whatever is going on there. But that it just, well, there's a clarity there, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it's so different, I think, from some of our conditioning. Um, I just think in my personal situation where this has been coming up, there's a lot around like, yeah, making making space for it all or doing it, you know, to like be there for another person or something like that, you know? Um, like the fine line of that, I guess, has been coming up for me. Like you were saying, it's not intolerance in the sense of like I don't understand you and I think what you're doing is wrong, but it's I understand myself and I know it
Right.
would be wrong for me to do that. And like, yeah, how do we in some circumstances when like for me it's coming up in my personal like romantic partnership, live-in partnership, like when there's that difference and it's happening in the home, you know, like in the space where you live, how do you come to an understanding with that? That's been my sort of
Mhm.
dilemma.
Yeah, it very much reminds me, like you were speaking of the rainbow energy, the prisms, like these, if you think about the colors being, just different frequencies, right? This is what I was trying to explain. Like we talk about the oneness, right? We are all the rainbow, but we're all like different colors
Yeah.
in that spectrum. So there's not a wrongness about being a different color, right? It's just that that color maybe isn't in resonance for me right now, right? Or we've talked about the puzzle, right? The puzzle analogy, right? Maybe that puzzle piece is a little farther away for me to access right now, right? Whereas, um, you know, I think I've talked before about how, when I'm speaking or Cori's speaking and something in you lights up while you're listening to us, like that's a soul to soul connection. To me, that's the resonance. That's the closeness of the puzzle, the closeness of the colors on the spectrum kind of thing. Um, and that like you can't deny that. You feel it so intensely. And then on the opposite end of it, right? If there's not a resonance, right? If you're listening and you're like, oh no, like that, this doesn't vibe with me at all. I don't agree with this. I don't like, no. Then right, that's the dissonance, right? That comes into play that tells you that that's a little farther away right now. And it's not wrong. Like it all gets to exist. It's just how much can we understand ourselves and our frequency, our beliefs, our mission, our vision, our all of that, right? And we've also talked a little bit about that piece and like the selfish part of it, right? And I now, like right now, I personally feel even more committed to what I'm doing in my journey and how I'm showing up. And I just keep getting called to play bigger, to expose more, to reveal more of myself, to allow that expression to come out, to, um, let my energy be big and not hide, not play small, not any of that. And I think in a lot of ways through my journey, I've done that in so many ways. And it continues to ask me, spirit, God, universe continues to ask me to bring more, to show up more. And there's just such a part of me that has anchored into that I'm not going to let that go. And in moments like last week, speaking to distraction and stuff, of course there's distraction. And I was just reading a post about this guy I know who's coming, going offline, and he was talking actually about how much of a distraction social media can be instead of an inspiration. And we're all, no matter what work we do, we're all prone to that. Like we're all like susceptible to it in some way, right? And it just takes this supreme diligence for us to stay in alignment, right? To always be coming back to that. And I think maybe with the intolerance, or even using those words like intolerance, maybe some of that is speaking to having been distracted, having played a little smaller, and my little inner Kristin coming out and saying, I'm not going to fucking do that anymore, you know? Right? So then it's like a stronger word. That dissonance, that intolerance becomes like a stronger word, right? Um, or that dissonance becomes intolerance, right? Because dissonance and resonance, I think, are very neutral.
Mm.
Um, to me at least, or they feel that way more so than tolerance and intolerance. Um, so yeah, I feel like I said with that sound healing, I was definitely feeling like a an emergence again, like a reminder, to come back to the power within me. And I don't I can't even see selfish along with that, because I feel like it's the entire reason why I exist.
I love that so much. And it is, right? Like, why else would we be here? I mean, we talked about this before, but why else would we be here in these unique forms with these unique experiences? Um, if we were to, deny that in some way or something. Um, and this to me just is the energy of the 31. Like this is my whole point of being here is to be me, is to sound my truth, is to share my unique expression. And not like in a, like again, my way is the right way or something, but in a my way is my way. And there's a place in the world for that. And where I'm fitting into the puzzle, it's necessary for me to share that. Um, And I really feel like, yeah, there's a lot going on in collectively, in the sky, on the earth. Um, there's a lot of things shifting and changing. And I think a big part of that, again, is like when I first touched on these, is a shift in the way that we kind of see leadership and we see the relationships and we see groups and communities. um, we're getting closer and closer to that shift of the collective cross, incarnation cross, and we're moving from, what was more tribal type energy, where we did maybe feel like we needed to fit in, or contort ourselves to, make things work. But now the invitation is like no more. And I think that's what I hear when you say like that part of yourself that's like, oh no, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of doing this. Like, I can't, I don't want to anymore. That's not what I'm here for. Um, and like you said, where it becomes a bit more of a stronger energy, like this just isn't part of my path. And um, yeah, it feels like a really powerful time with the full moon coming up. So the full moon will be in 41 um, on Wednesday. And it feels like a powerful time to kind of like tune in and listen and observe the new code, I mean, like there's a new code that's been being written for a while, I think collectively. And then we come to places in our own journeys where it's happening. And this is just, I feel like kind of a supercharged one where it's like, we've written the new code. Now we're gonna like be reading that code.
Mm.
And some things are gonna shift and change. And it might feel like, yeah, we don't know yet because we are at that threshold. But like you said, there's actually not. It's interesting. I don't know if we talked about it before when the sun was in 62, but 62 and 31 make up the codon ring of no return. And that's kind of what I feel like it is. Like there's no going back. Um, yeah.
Yeah. As you were talking about like the tribal leadership, I was very much feeling like, the get in line, there's only one way, right? There's one leader, we're following this system, right? And now it's so much more about igniting the leadership within every one of us, right? What is your expression of leadership? What is and leadership being, almost like what do you want to take the lead on, right? Like what is your path? Like lead your path instead of like who are the people you want to lead. So it's more like, we get to, I mean, I think tribe is still a beautiful way to express it, right? If we're all sitting in circle, if the tribe is sitting in circle and the different leaders get to speak and recognize like their gifts within each other and why they're here, what they're taking the lead on, where their mastery has been in their journey, we get to coexist, we get to co-lead. And it's so much less about this top-down approach. It's so interesting because when I was in corporate, I very much lived like this. Like I was always like, I don't care what your title is. I'm going to speak to you all the same way. Like I just didn't, I remember working at like the bank I worked at and people would be like, "Oh my God, there's, Bob Wilmers was his name. He doesn't he's not alive anymore, but Bob Wilmers, there's Bob Wilmers, and he was this cute old man. He couldn't have been much taller than me. Um, that ran the whole bank, right? And people were just, like he's a celebrity. I'm the same way with celebrities. I'm like, I don't, who cares? Like that they're just humans. Like they're the same as all of us. Like I just don't, I never have looked at people that way. I've never felt this like hierarchy of people in our world. I've just never felt that. I don't, and I've always said, like when I was in corporate, I would say if I can't just be me, then I don't want to be in a place like this. If I can't talk to someone just as I would anyone else, like I'm not going to shift who I am because I'm talking to an executive or senior vice president or the president of the bank or like whatever. I don't care what their role is. Like I still get to be a part of the tribe in my own leadership and my own expression, and my thought is that that's the whole reason why I'm there, right? Like because of that unique expression and value that I bring to the table. And so why would I dampen that? Um and so it's just interesting because I've always kind of felt, that there's not this I've always been very against the top-down approach. And even as I was shifting through my career and in through some different roles, and I took on more like senior leadership roles, and I was communicating a lot, between like senior management teams and the people. And I remember that being like, a little um, conflicting for some of the managers, the other managers, because they thought I shared too much, and I've always just believed in that openness and the transparency and um yeah, like that's where we get to shine together when we know all the facts, right? When we know all the details, when we know what the others know, you know, um, when the others aren't hiding, right? And very much in that, like I'm speaking from a hiding information in corporate kind of sense. But if you think about it from what we were just talking about, in terms of like emerging and not hiding anymore and speaking your true voice and all of that, like that gets to relate too, right? So who would we be if everyone around us was, free, was free to express themselves, to be, to bring forth the leadership that they want to bring? And some people will say, well, I don't want to be a leader. I'm not interested in being a leader, but we all have wisdom to share. We all have experience, you know, that we've mastered, that we've, our life experiences are lived, becomes lived wisdom. And that is leadership. It's not, again, it's not like who can I influence and tell what to do? It's how can I make an impact in this world? And of course, yes, that can be through people, but it can also be through ideas. It can be through building things. It can be through artistry. It can be through so many modalities, you know, like artists, like helping us see things in unique ways, unique in different ways. Just even having conversations, right, with other people and hearing perspectives and having events pulled together where, forums where you can hear different ideas and perspectives on things. Like these are all ways that leadership can be expressed. Um, and maybe this is just one of those times where we really, as a collective need to think about the way we've defined something. I feel like I'm always thinking about that, right? Like, what does this mean to me? And what I'm always sort of having these little philosophical discussions in my head and then coming to my own conclusion, but I don't know that everybody does that. Sometimes people just say, well, this is what this means, and I think it's really kind of cool when we can start to unravel how we're defining things.
I love it so much. And I think just what you shared and is such a great example of this energy being alive in us. Um, because I'm thinking, in human design and the gene keys, a big part of the paradigm shift that we're moving through, they do talk about moving from like hierarchical systems to more of a synarchy, where again, it's not uh, top-down leadership, but it is like everyone coming together in their unique ways and forming this. We kind of talked about it before, like where when each individual is showing up as they are meant to, it kind of forms this other aura that is created from each unique individual coming together. And that everybody has a role in that, that there's not one role that's more important than another role. Um, but that everybody is, just as you said, I love the way you put it, is leading in their own way, like leading with something. It's not about like, yeah, come follow me or do what I say or do it how I do it. Um, it's like I have something to contribute, and this other person has something to contribute, and this other person has something to contribute. And when we all contribute that, it comes together and creates something, um, quite magnificent. And what I think is that yeah, we talk a lot about the shift happening at a certain time, but the shift has already been happening, right? Like the shift was seeded a long time ago. And those of us that are here now, just the way that you shared this, like that you came into this world knowing that hierarchy was not the way, that synarchy was. You're here with the synarchy alive within you. And so you being you again is like seeding that, it's ushering that in, it's bridging that gap. Um, and that's alive in each and every one of us. I kind of see us as like each little explorers, like we're like on our own little paths, carving our way, paving our way through, clearing the path. And maybe like someone else comes onto the path for a minute, but then like that gets them to the next part of their path, Not that it's like we just have this one way to go and that's the way to go. I just see so many like offshoots and innovation. That's where innovation lives. Um, and that's what's happening right now is like, again, there are these pretty big shifts and changes and innovations and mutations and leaps that are happening within like not just the way that we think and communicate and express ourselves, but I think within like our very DNA. And and it's just awakening to more of what's always been there. And that is the unity, like uniting it in this way that again, it's not about like just becoming all the same, but it's about knowing how interconnected we really are because each person is, and I'm going to use one of your words here, a key holder, right?
Mhm. I think that this podcast is a great example of co-leadership. And if you think about relationship dynamics and you think about masculine, feminine energetics, and a lot of times this is it's spoken about in terms of like, the masculine leading and the feminine, you know, submitting. And it doesn't necessarily mean man, woman for masculine, feminine energetics, right? It just means who takes the lead, right? Even with Cori and I on this podcast right now, two women, like in theory, like relationship wise, like one of us would be more in the masculine and the other one would be, more feminine, right? Like a lot of times you listen to podcasts, right, with podcast hosts who bring in guests, sometimes you'll note it like the podcast host is, leading and like setting the tone for everything, right? And then the person is responding, which is very feminine. But this, I think, is an example, like the way we do this podcast, like neither one of us, like, or like we're both leading. And it's very seamless. It's not like, okay, Cori, hand the mic to you, like you lead now. It's seamless, right? And this is what I want more of. This is what I crave more of. And being a part of spaces, I love collaborating and, uh, and doing things with other visionaries. And I always want it to be from this space, this like we're on this, we're on the same level, leading this together. And it's not just like, well, this is the retreat leader, and we're all here, little minions, to do what the retreat leader says. Like, that's not my vibe. I want to create in spaces where it feels like this. And I remember when I was traveling full time and I was out in Arizona and I went to my friend Carrie's house and we decided to do like a moon gathering of just it was Carrie, myself, and one other woman. And we didn't have a plan for it. And we decided to go on a journey. We took like some mushrooms and went on this little journey. But we each kind of stepped in and like led at certain points. And it was very seamless. It wasn't anybody trying to dominate the space or control the space. And I think that this is a real, we've talked about it before, this shift, this invitation to shift relationship dynamics, and that there can be, we both get to be, we both get to be passionate and expressive and lead in our missions without there being this, you know, I need you to step down. One of us has to step down if we're going to be here co-creating this together. That's what's not in resonance with me anymore when it comes to any relationship, right? Intimate, business, friendship. If there's any part of the other that's trying to control me or not let me be free or not let me like contribute the same or on an equal, quote unquote equal level. Contribute meaning I get to contribute what I want to contribute. um, then that doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, I do think this is such a good example of the way that we're meant to come together. Um, which again is just like each of us showing up. Yeah, and even the word like contribute, I guess, looking at that too, because sometimes there's this conditioning around contribute that like it's like this duty that or like that there's something expected of you. But I really think of it as like at this level that we're talking, it's more like contributing our own unique expression more than anything, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and that each of us, again, like our expression is why we're here. And so it's going to be so helpful and useful and, you know, bountiful when we come together with those various expressions and create. Um, and two, I love that yeah, the masculine and feminine energies are speaking through here too, because I think we've already kind of touched on it when the sun was moving through two and the earth was in one, and we'll visit it again when I mean, we visit it throughout all of this, but we'll also visit it again when we do the 63 and 64 in like the Pisces Virgo axis. And essentially these are like the bookends of the I Ching, the bookends of the 64 gene keys, the bookends of human design, the gates. And they kind of encompass everything and they really carry the masculine and feminine um, energetics. And what they've found is like that actually things that might have been shifted over time to put the masculine first and the feminine second, but that actually it was probably most likely the other way around, where the feminine led and the masculine followed with that support. And that feels like it's alive in the shift there, right? That it's not like, again, leading is just changing the definition of it. Um, and having it be more of a unique emergence and allowance and surrender that happens first, and then the kind of support is offered second.
Mhm. Yeah, I think traditional masculine feminine energetics speaks to the masculine leading. Um, and it's it's definitely like a little rabbit hole to go down, but there is for sure the feminine flavor of that. Um, and also I think the dynamics come in with, what is your core essence, right? Is your core essence kind of more feminine or is your core essence more masculine? And then when you do take the quote unquote lead, that essence does come through as well, right? Um, and I think, history has also shown us that if we go to matriarchy, that's not good. And if we go to patriarchy, that's not good either, right? So it gets to be, again, both masculine and feminine get to lead. There's co-leadership that happens, within us, within our own very being. The masculine and feminine within me get to co-lead, um, and play a role in the decisions that I make and how I make them and how I move through them. Um, it's just, I definitely feel this. And like I said, I have my whole life felt the co-leadership. Um, and, I'm just reflecting on like my past experiences and, I can see moments where some of that old paradigm energy was present within me, even when I was managing or leading others. And I think it's about recognizing that, right? I think as I matured in my career, I saw more of the co-leadership when I was actually managing um, or responsible, quote unquote, for people in a hierarchy in corporate. Um, but the essence of me always, kind of saw everyone on this level playing field and wanted the interaction to be with everyone on a level playing field, so that there was always dissonance between those two, right? And I think it's really for those of you who are out there, in that space, right? Like I'm a business owner and I get to just manage me, right? But for those of you who are out there like in the world navigating all of this, I think it would just be interesting to, pay attention to how you view co-leadership and how it's showing up for you in your everyday. Whether that's at work or with your kids or your partner, whatever that looks like, right? In your business. Um, I think it's just an invitation, right? Especially as we're approaching fastly 2027. Um, but I think all of this goes back to time being irrelevant and the energy's already here. Like I said, I felt it for much of my life, right? It means that it's always been here. It's just what are the frequencies we're tuned into? You know, like you said, Cori, what codes did you come here with already? And that's our unique expression, right? Those are the seeds, those are the bridges that we become in the world. Um, and that's why there's value to go, full circle back. It's not that there's value in our difference, is what I was going to say. It's not, I don't have to resonate with what you're saying. And my lack of resonance doesn't make what you're saying invaluable, or another viewpoint doesn't make that invaluable. It just makes it not in resonance for me right now, and that's all right.
Yeah. It's it feels like there's just such wisdom within us, knowing within us, and truth within us that wants to emerge, and that it gets to exist with everything, with that in everyone else too. And that we don't have to choose, I guess, between allowing that to lead ourselves through the world and um, be in relationship and in community and in collaboration. That there is this other way, and we're seeing it all around us. Like you said, it's here, it's alive within us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe that's what makes it so hard to see the things that, like, do feel a bit outdated, or just like from a different part of our evolution. It's like, oh, we're past that. Like
Mm-hmm.
we've moved to a different place now, and there's so much more possibility than we could see before. So now that we have this new information or this new code or whatever we want to call it, again, it's like that. We can't really go back. And so some of the stuff that's back there can feel a bit like, what?
Yeah.
uncomfortable and like just done with it.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking about how, Corey and I will kind of laugh about what came up in the conversation sometimes because we're like, well, I wasn't expecting to go there today or and relationships has been a theme, it's kind of whether that's, relationship with ourselves or with another, our business, social media, marketing. Like we've talked about relationships we have with so many different things. And I really like, I think it took me until this episode to realize that this is why, because we're moving into co-leadership. And when there's anything co, it's relationship, right? That's the lens. So you don't co-create anything without that, co-lead, without that. So maybe that's why like this lens has been so prevalent in our conversations, at least one of the reasons why. But well, we probably beat that horse to death. So how are you feeling? Do you have anything else you want to add into the conversation?
The only other thing that I will maybe say, because I don't know if I said it this episode, I know I mentioned last episode that the keys we were contemplating were cusp keys. So they were moving us from Cancer season into Leo season. So we have the sun now in these keys in Leo, and we have the earth in keys in Aquarius. So this full moon that we're having in the 41 will be in Aquarius. And we're also entering into eclipse season because the nodes have moved now into Leo and Aquarius. So yeah, just recognizing that that's also a big part of this conversation, like the Leo Aquarius axis is very much about the individual and the larger collective and the kind of paradox of um yeah, having both and merging both, I suppose.
Mm.
But that's yeah, that's just a little part I wanted to add in for those of you that like to kind of weave them all and see how they connect.
So north and south nodes are in Leo Aquarius now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they have moved in. Let me just verify. If they haven't moved in yet, they're quite close. But I have been kind of offline this week, so let me just verify. Yep, we're in. We're in. Um,
So
so
where's the
this,
north node?
the north node is in Aquarius, and the
Aquarius.
south node is in Leo.
Okay.
So they've just moved in. They move in, uh, they move through a sign like backwards almost. So
Hmm.
they just moved into 29 degrees of that axis.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, we'll be having
Yeah.
an eclipse season once the moon, like the moon cycle, the new and full moons get close, I think within like an 18 degree orb of the nodes, then we're in it. But again, too, because we're having this full moon in the sign, I think we're already kind of feeling the stirrings of it.
Hmm.
But I
I
think
was
that's
just
where it's
especially
fun.
curious because my north node's in Leo.
Yeah, so you're
That's why I
so
was
you're going
asking.
through your nodal opposition.
Hmm.
Yeah, it'll be fun to kind of to explore that over this next month. I think the first um eclipse will be on the 12th of August, I'm pretty sure. So
Okay.
we'll um we'll tune into that energy as well.
Yeah, we sure will. Eclipse seasons are always fun. All right, guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing, commenting, all the things. We appreciate you guys for being here with us on this journey so much. And we will be back in a few days, I think. So we'll be back to our regular cycle. So we're again really glad to be on this journey. It means a lot to both of us. I know it means a lot to Cori too, and having you all here. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.